Hello, everyone, and welcome to Live Signing. I'm Danny Valdez, and with us today is CNN host and author Don Lemon. He is here for the live signing of his new book, This is the Fire, What I Say to My Friends About Racism. Love that title. Don, welcome, and how are you today?
Hi, Danny. I'm doing quite well. It's been a busy day. I had to face the ladies of The View this morning to talk about this. So go easy on me.
Yes. Okay. Well, you go easy back. You're the man of experience, the quintessential interviewer. So it's really a pleasure and honor to be doing this. And I wanted to tell those of you listening, for the next hour, Don is going to be signing books, of course, and answering as many of your questions as possible. For those who have just tuned in and have not yet purchased one of these books, you still have time to order an autographed copy and submit a question to Don. So when you buy this autographed book from our site at premiercollectibles.com, there's a little box where you can actually write a question, and we will get that on our iPad and we can ask that to Don live. Just go to premiercollectibles.com/lemon to order your copy. So really looking forward to this. And I wanted to launch out with this review from Kirkus Reviews and ask you about this, Don. And they write, he puts 2020 in context and gives it the language to sing a quietly outraged song. Long on context and analysis, this is a vital book for these times. Don, why did you write this book? Why is it a vital book for these times? Why now?
Well, I wrote during the pandemic, everyone had been asking me, Danny, what do you want to do? Not during the pandemic, but during the Trump administration, write a book, write a book, write a book, write a book. And I didn't want to write a political book, and I didn't want to be closely aligned to the administration like that. And so I said no, because I have a full-time job. I anchor 2 hours every single night. And so a 2-hour show, and that takes up more time and energy than I really have in a day, really in a week, to do 2 hours live a night. And so when Charlottesville happened, and then Breonna Taylor happened, and Ahmaud Arbery happened, and then when George Floyd happened, and we watched someone die basically in front of our eyes, and people started to call me and say, "What do I do? What happens? I feel like I haven't. I mean, quite honestly, I feel like I haven't listened to you or listened to my Black friends enough about these things that go on in our society, and help me." And I said, well, I started giving people advice. And as I was doing it, I said, you know what, I may as well just write a book so that everyone can have sort of a friend to talk to or get advice from. And that was the impetus for the book.
Wow. That's really interesting. And I would love to know, backing up a little bit, when did you know you wanted to be in journalism? When did you know that you wanted to speak on matters? Were you passionate as a young man? Were you educating people? Were you having riveting conversations? I mean, what was sort of your start in your life?
That I want to be a journalist. I've written about it before, is that I've always been curious, even as a child. I was very curious. I would we would be either on vacation or just at a restaurant, like in our town. And I would just get up as a kid, like a little kid, and go over to people's tables and ask them, what are you doing here? Are you on vacation? Are you with your family? I would just start asking them questions. And my mom would say, get back over here, come back. And my dad would always say, my mom would tell me these stories. Don't teach him to be afraid. Don't teach that boy to be afraid of people. And so I've always asked these questions. I was just curious about people. And I find that that's the best way to be in life. Instead of being judgmental, to be curious about why people are the way they are, why they do the things that they do. And so that was my first really entree into journalism, was just asking questions to people as a child. And so it was a natural segue that I go from childhood curiosity to adult curiosity, which meant being a journalist.
I love that. And it's you can go from getting in trouble in school for asking too many questions to getting paid to ask all the questions. I wanted to ask about the title, This is the Fire. That, like, before I even know what the book's about, I love the title, but can you tell me how you came up with this title?
Well, I had it right here. It's in my bag, which is out of frame here. My really mentor and my literary all-time hero is James Baldwin, who was a revolutionary and a trailblazer, especially when it came to civil rights. But really writing, as you can probably hear the ambulance on the street. I live in New York City, so it's very loud. a book called The Fire Next Time by James Baldwin really changed my life as a young man. It helped me get through racism. It helped me get through, being a gay man. He was a Black gay man living in America. This book was written in 1963, before I was even born.
Mm.
But I picked it up in my freshman year in college and never went back. I started reading the entire James Baldwin canon. And so when it
Wow.
came time to write a book, I said, if I'm going to do this and take the time, then it's going to be something that's significant to me and that can change, I would hope, people's attitudes towards race. And so I named it, at the beginning of the book, he uses a quote from the Bible, and he said, God gave Noah the rainbow sign, no more water, the fire next time. And I thought the perfect name for a book is This is the Fire, we're in it right now. And so that's how the title came about.
So powerful. I'm curious too, from when you were younger, what was your perspective on racism, let's say, as a young man growing up? In our 20s, we start to sort of get passionate about things. We start to get ideas about who we are and what we believe. And I'm curious what your perspective on racism was in your 20s versus now.
Well, the interesting thing is that I think that when I was in my 20s, and maybe I'm wrong, I felt that we were obviously not in a perfect place. We weren't as evolved on racial issues as we are now. But I felt that we were a bit more open and a lot less political.
Mm.
And now we are so divided by politics. And I didn't feel that then. Maybe I was just naive. But I really do think that those were the times that we were in, that we were in a place where we were coming out of the civil rights movement, and we had gone through, the 70s, the Vietnam War, sort of, free love and disco and that sort of thing, where people were interacting with each other and at least trying to learn about each other. And now I feel like we're in a place where people have closed off now, and everybody's in their respective corners. So, but I felt that I was more open then in hoping, I should say, that I was more optimistic that people were trying to do the right thing. Now I'm still optimistic, but I'm not sure that people are not everyone is trying to do the right thing. So my perspective on race hasn't changed. I'm open-minded. I've always been, my mom called me the United Nations, because I've always had friends of all different stripes and
Love
ethnicities.
that. Yeah.
But I do think that we're in a time now that is going to set the trajectory for the rest of our days to come as Americans,
Yeah.
and Americans,
And
as a country of Americans.
yeah, and being a figure in the media as you are, like, I'm personally curious what your perspective is from, when we turn on, let's say, media or social media, and we see people's opinions, which they seem to write about without thought sometimes, that versus your encounter with real people in real life. Like, because when you're saying about the difference in how people are approaching racism today versus the 70s, do you feel like that difference is because it's more accessible, people have social media, we can talk about it more? And do you feel like there's a difference when you're walking down the street versus when you're browsing online?
What do you mean? What do you mean? Say that again. What do you?
Yeah, so if I turn on Facebook and I do, let's say, a search for very inflammatory political events, or things, Black Lives Matter protests, for example, something that people are seemingly divided on, I get one perspective on the status of our country, racially speaking. But when I personally walk down the street, I get sort of another view. When I'm just out in public, I live in Nashville. It's totally, there seems to be this separate world of online versus real life. And I'm curious, from your perspective as someone who's way more in media than I am, way more on the forefront of these issues, do you think that media reflects the reality of what's going on? Or do you feel that there is a discrepancy there?
Well, I think that there's a difference, obviously, between media and social media. All right.
Yeah.
So if you're talking about legacy media, which means, the sort of media that I'm in, with the traditional, the traditional
That's a good point. Yeah.
media,
Right.
then yeah, there's a difference. Now, I do think that social media is a place for extremes and for everyone's point of view and opinions. So people are going to have extreme points of view and opinions. If you're talking about Twitter, Twitter is a place where people, if
Yeah.
someone is not outraged, if people are not outraged on Twitter, then Twitter is not doing its thing.
Right.
I do think it's sad, though, that social media has devolved into conspiracy theories and a place of misinformation. So I'm not surprised that you're getting one perspective on social media, especially on places like Facebook
Yeah.
and even
Right.
so on Twitter, where the facts are just not checked and people can say whatever they want and people will believe it. Why do you believe that? Because I saw it on Facebook. Well,
Yeah. Yeah.
where did it come from? Well, it was on Facebook. They don't know if it's a legitimate news organization or not. Now, I think the bigger media, the legacy media, I think in some ways, um, what it's doing is reporting on basically nowadays what politicians are doing, and that is exploiting the divisions that lies between people.
Mm,
So politicians have what politicians have done now. They have perfected the art, if you will, of dividing people in order to stay in power, and that is what media is reporting on, because
mm,
they realize that if you divide people, if you fill them full of fear, right, then you can, in many ways, manipulate them into voting for you or
mm.
believing in what you believe in, even though what you believe in or your issues may not necessarily be so or true. And
Yeah.
so I think that is what you're seeing being reflected back to you in the mainstream media is um, the politicians and politics of this country exploiting the divide in people.
Yeah. Appreciate you sharing that. That was sort of a personal question from me. I
Well,
just
but I think the solution to that is more people, instead of get off of social media and go to um, and go meet people who are not like you.
mm,
Invite people over to your house for a barbecue or a cookout or whatever who are not like you.
I
A
love that.
neighbor or someone who's at your kid's baseball game or whomever who may happen to be Hispanic or Latino or white or whatever who doesn't look like you, and and try to get to know them, because that's the
Yeah.
only way that we're going to change this is through relationships.
I love that. And I find too that when you do that, when you actually have someone over, when you actually attend an event that is not, your typical event you would attend, and you have conversations with people, you find that even if you disagree with them, they're so reasonable as to why they came to the opinion they came to. Usually speaking, I find, if I'm not at some event where people are coming to debate, but you're just having dinner with a friend, they're so reasonable as to where they come, why they came to their conclusions, and I find they're also open to change and having a different opinion. Do you find the same?
Well, that's the whole thing. Yes, I do. I mean, that's the whole thing about family. No one gets
Yeah.
along with 100% of the people in their family. I
Right.
love my
Right.
mom more than anything, and we don't agree on everything all
Sure.
the time. But it's just sort of having this idea. I always reference um, religion and church. Like, people go to church and they hear all of these things that they're supposed to do, like love your fellow man and do the right thing and turn the other cheek and do unto others. And then they go back and they spend time with only the people who look like them and agree with them, or just their family members.
Right. Right.
And, right, and then or
Yeah.
in the church. And I think the thing that separates us the most, we're more separated when we're in the pews rather than being
Mm,
going to, as I say, someone's get together, someone's gathering, meeting people in the park. I mean, it's so easy to get to know people and to establish relationships, I feel, once you get off of social media and Facebook and all of those things, and you get out of the confines of your own doing,
yeah.
and
It's so
and
good.
and get to know other people. It's as simple as that. And I know people say it's hard. It's really not that hard. We can send a machine to Mars and a man
Right.
to the moon. You
Right.
can meet someone who is not in your friend circle or your inner circle.
Here, here. So in your book, I'm curious. I wanted to ask you a personal question. Did any key events happen in your personal life um, that you go into in the book that have shaped your opinion on racism in this country?
In my personal life, well, I've had to
Mhm.
listen. I write about in the book about how people of color, and I'd imagine in some ways women are like this too, but marginalized people in general are
Mhm.
always at, when you're in a race, it's ready, set, go. As a
Yeah.
Black person in this society, I'm always at set. Like, you're like, okay, get ready,
Mm.
everybody, all right. And then you're in that set position where you're like up on your haunches and you're like ready to spring into action. And
Yeah.
so I always feel that that is sort of a paranoia that we live in, whether it's the discrimination is true or not. The reality is that that's where we live, because that
Yeah.
has been created in this country. And that's just the reality of this country. You never know if it's going to happen or not. And more often than not, it happens. But then when it doesn't, people, will say, oh my gosh, you're seeing things that are not there. But that's the
Yeah.
paranoia that has been really imposed upon people of color in this country. And most people who are not of color don't realize it. They don't live in that paranoia.
Wow.
That is
Wow.
completely foreign
Wow.
to them. And
Yes.
that's the people hate that word privilege, but that's what privilege is about. Never having to think about it, and never having to think about it. What does that mean? That means it doesn't exist for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's an interesting concept. A friend of mine, black guy, actually said to me something that really changed a lot for me. Is he said that he goes, man, he goes, I'm not trying to wave the privilege flag or anything, but he goes, consider this. I quit as a like when I was growing up, he said questions and possibilities didn't even come to my mind. That came to your mind second nature about what you wanted to be when you grow up. He goes, the things I thought about of what I could be when I grew up. He goes, even if we grew up in the same neighborhood, he goes, it's not. He goes, I'm not trying to wave any flags. I'm just saying it didn't come into your brain the things that came into my brain, and vice versa.
Mhm.
I think that's something that I wish more people knew. Is it's not so much of like, everyone in the country is driving around with a racist flag hanging on the back of their pickup truck, but there are things that are very difficult to explain in terms of what's possible in a person's life. Would you agree with that?
I do. I think that, yeah, and it really came home to me because we have those possibilities and those lack of possibilities and lack of opportunities when it comes to race in this country. It's also a matter of class, right? Or if you
Yeah,
want to say class or caste or race.
sure.
And then it's also, there's regional as well. I remember when I moved to New York City, and everyone was operating on a sort of different level than I was, because I was a Southern kid who, was had come um, from Louisiana State, and people had told me, my professor told me that I would never make it as a journalist, right? And
Wow.
here I was working with all these people who had gone to NYU and Ivy League schools, and living here in the Northeast, and to them it was normal. It's like, of course I'm going to have an internship here at this TV station. It was just, for them it was sort of an entitlement issue. It was if
Yeah.
it was supposed to be that way, and here
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, is it okay? Like, it's like there was a self-doubt that creeped in. Am I good enough to be doing this job? Should I be in this position? And they were carrying themselves with a degree of privilege and whatever, that it was just, this is how it's supposed to be. It's just natural.
Sure.
For
Sure.
me, it wasn't natural. For
Yeah.
me, it's just like, oh God, I'm so happy to be here. Wow. Am I going to be exposed? Are they going to find out that I'm not
Wow.
whatever? It was all of these things that were going through your head. So that happens on many different levels in society, race-wise, caste-wise,
Sure.
socioeconomic-wise, even regional.
Did you feel like a stowaway on a ship?
I did. I
Yeah.
felt like I was, and then once I started to pull it off, like, first of all, it's like you don't feel worthy of it, right?
Yeah.
And then you realize, well, hell, I can do this. Like, what the I almost said a bad word. Like, what the hell? Like, it just so happens that you were, brought up in a different place, and more money, and your dad was somebody or your mom was somebody. I don't have that particular privilege, but uh, after a while, I felt like, yeah, I was getting away with something. I was like,
Yeah.
wow, yeah.
Wow. Well, so a lot of questions have come in. I will absolutely selfishly hog all this time for my questions. But how about we jump to the questions from people who have bought your book? Are you ready?
Yeah, sure.
All right, let's do
Go.
this. So,
I'm tired of listening to you, Danny. I'm kidding.
no, I'm sorry. I've done it again. Okay.
I'm jealous of your hair, by the way. I wish I
Oh,
had that much hair.
thanks, man. You just got to be born half Mexican. You know. You know. It's that Mexican privilege.
It's a good head of hair. It's a really good head of hair.
Oh, thank you, man. Hey, yours ain't too bad, I
Yeah,
dig.
it's a little bit of a fur. I just got a haircut for you yesterday.
Hey, oh, thanks, man. Sarah from Denver, Colorado Hello, looking forward to reading your book, Don. Thank you for laying things out. Is there anything you'd wish you'd included in the book that just didn't fit for some reason?
Well, there were a lot of things that didn't fit, but I think I got pretty much everything in there. And it is a short 200 and some pages. And I wanted to be short, tight, and powerful, like the fire next time. And that was my goal. And so this time, this is the fire. It's short, tight, and very powerful. But it's not a regret, but I finished writing it right before the insurrection. And I could have included the insurrection, but the insurrection to me was a confirmation that I was doing the right thing and that I was focused on the right thing. Because if you read the beginning chapters where I talk about, I don't know if you've had the opportunity to read it, Danny, but I talk about the woman in Central Park with the dog who called the cops on the black guy, and her name is Cooper, and his name is Cooper. They both happen to be Cooper, but they're not related. And so I talk about that, and it was all over a dog.
Wow.
And then I write about, unless we solve this problem, I use a metaphor at the end, or when I talk about, if we don't solve this problem, then someone is just going to come back with a bigger dog, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, the insurrection was the biggest dog that you could, because because people tried to overturn an election and really overthrow the government to get them to do what they wanted them to do and not the right thing, really because they had been fooled to think that the election was stolen by who? Black and brown people in urban centers around the country.
Yeah.
And which is what? Racism. They had racist insignia on their shirts. They had racist paraphernalia. They were calling people the N-word, police officers in the crowd. So let's call it for what it is. So that bigger racism dog was culminated into an insurrection. And so that's it. And I wish people ask me, there's one thing. What's her name again? I forget her name. I forget what she asked.
Oh, Sarah?
Sarah. I wish I had talked about, people ask me about solutions, or how can they, and I think, I hope I got it across about, I think I did, with the history of the country and teaching about how Black people contributed, or Africans contributed to the building of the country. But also, I wish I had touched on religion a little bit more, and how the realization that our depiction of Jesus, if you're a Christian, is not like some white guy who looks like a surfer dude, right? Or hippie.
Right.
Like he really was a Jewish guy in the Middle East who was dark, either dark or brown, from dark brown to medium brown. And if we created the popular, or not the popular, the realistic picture of what Jesus looks like, if that happens to be your religion, in your home, and you had statues or depictions of Jesus in your home that actually looked like what he actually looked like. And when your kid said, "Oh, who is that?" and you said Jesus, and they go, "Oh, he was brown," and then that's where you can start the conversation.
Wow, man. Okay. I love that.
That would be that, not what people want to hear, but it's the truth.
Oh, let's do it. I hope a lot of people do that. That's killer. Mary from California, how much control do you have over the content of your show, the topics, the guests, how much time you chat with Chris Cuomo, whether to cover a certain politician or event, et cetera?
I have a lot of editorial freedom at CNN. There are certain things that I have to do because it's the news of the day. But when the red light goes on, I'm live. I do 2 hours live every night. It's all me. And so when I'm done with this, I've been actually already, we've been discussing what happens on the show, what guests I'm going to have, what topics we're going to focus on. But then at the last minute, as you know, everything could all change in a second. It's not happening as much since we have a new administration, but up until we would go on the air, we'd be like, oh my God, is he going to tweet something? Is it going to be crazy? Is the world going to come to an end? I have probably out of any show on CNN, I have the most editorial freedom of anyone.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Warren from Indiana. As a gay Black man in the Midwest, I've experienced my share of racism and discrimination. I'm always taken back by being emotionally abused by those who should know better. Have you experienced the same? How do you deal with it?
About being emotionally abused from people who should know better? Yes. I have people even now, if you go and you search me, or if you look at my social media accounts, I think the criticism of me is often not what I know it is more often than not rooted in racism and homophobia. There's always some quip about, you know, being a race baiter or a bigot, which I'm not, or something that has to do with being gay or something. And there's not, and people think like they're shaming me about being gay. I don't see anything wrong with being gay. So therefore your shame does not work on me. Your powers, poof, you have no powers. They don't work on me. But yeah, people do it all the time. And here's I always look at the best way to conduct oneself in life and to get along is not to worry about what people think about you. Now I know that's sometimes hard with family, but I think that one must be true to themselves. You must walk in your own light, and carry your own voice, and then the world will catch up to you. Just be who you are and be true to yourself. It sounds like a cliche, but it is absolutely true. You don't need everyone to get along with you or believe in you or what have you. You don't need the blessings of a church or anything. You need the blessings of your God. And your God teaches you my God teaches me, I should say, that all men are equal. That everyone is equal under the sun, that everyone deserves to be happy, and everyone deserves to be a light and a reflection of God. You don't have to worry about religious teachings, because the same religious teachings that they use against you, they used against Black people and women in the Bible. It's all how you want to twist and interpret a Bible verse. So be you, know that you are a reflection of God. Don't worry about people shaming you. That shame is usually their shame and not yours. So don't let that rub off on you.
So well said. Caitlin from California, a highlight in our home is what we call the handoff from Chris Cuomo to you. When would you say that became a thing? Thank you for everything you do. Keep bringing the passion.
Okay, so it became a thing obviously when because Chris was in the morning and then he moved to prime time. And our boss said, you know, I noticed that on CNN, we go from one show to the other without any interaction. And he said, you know, Don, I would like a handoff for you and Chris. And I said, okay, you want a handoff? I'm going to give you one. And so it just so happens that Chris and I are actual friends who hang out with each other when we're not at work. We both like boating. He tends to, you know, on the fishing side, I like the recreational side. Like I like going out and picnicking and swimming and that sort of thing. But we do it together. The recreational part. Now he'll go off and he'll go fishing and I'll see you later.
Yeah.
You know, make sure you throw them back. Like, you know, it's whatever. So, but we actually hang out and our families know each other and, you know, he knows my mom and I know his mom and I know his wife and his kids and whatever. And so, we have the conversations on the air. That is the one really real unscripted part of the day on CNN where we don't know what we're going to talk about until they put us both, when he says, now it's time for the big show, the big man, whatever, Don Lemon, whatever. We have no idea what we're going to say until I see him. And I'll say, damn, your hair looks awful tonight, or whatever it is. Or it could be something like, you know what, that last segment you did, you were totally off base, and let me tell you why. Mm-hmm. And we just go into it. So that's how it came about. And because it is so real, and because people don't often really tell how they feel on television, that people are drawn to it, and it's become a thing. And we just did a pilot episode of a podcast that's called The Handoff. And so there you go. I don't know. I think it's just because we're authentic and real. And it is what it is. I hope we don't get canceled for it, but there you
go. Donna from St. Augustine, Florida says, Don, I'm a native New Yorker and remember the racial problems of the 60s when I was growing up. I feel as if we've been moving right back there in terms of racism and equality in general. I know a lot of it has to do with the last administration. As only one person, what is it that I can do to help heal relationships in my corner of the world? Thank you for taking my question.
Is it Jackie? Who is it again?
Donna.
I should know that. Donna, you're right. We were, as a matter of fact, to go off of the last question, I was just talking to Chris about that in our handoff segment, where he said he wasn't alive in the 50s and 60s when people were actively trying to, keep African Americans from having equal access to anything. And I said, but you're living it now when you look at all the voter suppression laws that are happening. And when you look at what happened with the insurrection and all the racist things that happened in Charlottesville and on and on and on. So now you have people who are actively trying to do that, and they're trying to do it legally now by changing the way we vote and limiting access to people, which turns out to be people who look like me for the most part, and,
Mm.
and poor people of all different ethnicities and people who don't have access. So you're right. That is happening now, actively happening. The best thing that I would say that you could do to that is to be engaged. And also you should be politically engaged. And I don't mean, doesn't mean that you have to be a Democrat or Republican or whatever it is, but you have to be engaged enough that you know who your local council person is, the alderman or alderwoman. You have to be involved in the local business of your town, so that when people try to pass these laws or get by with doing things like this, that you can speak out and you can make your voice heard. And that is not every 4 years through a national election. It's not every 2 years through a primary election. So I would say get involved and make your voices heard. And just as Ibram X. Kendi says in his book about being an anti-racist, you have to be an anti-limitation person, an anti-racist person. I don't want to, that's Ibram's brilliant analysis in words. I don't want to take that from him but you have to be anti all of those things in your life. And when people try to do those things, you must speak up, and I say, go to the streets and protest, because you need to make your voices heard. I was listening to Doris Kearns Goodwin this morning on television, and she was talking about the civil rights movement and being involved and marching as a young woman. And if they were trying to pass the voter suppression laws that were happening now, if she were in her 20s, she would be outraged and in the streets protesting.
Wow.
And that's what people need to do. They need to become concerned and active about what's happening in their local governments.
Oh, I love that.
And hold their local politicians, hold them to task.
Yes, I love that. I have so much discussion and more questions based on that. But
I'll go fast.
yeah, well, I need to stick with these people's questions, but you keep sparking the fire in me, man. Like, okay,
this
Rhonda.
Is the fire.
This is the fire, man. All right, Rhonda from Arlington, Texas. Mr. Lemon, how are you able to maintain your composure while interviewing someone that has a white supremacist outlook? Your professionalism is outstanding.
Thank you. I have to keep my composure because I'm speaking for you.
Wow.
And I'm speaking for the people at home. And this may be the only time that someone sees that type of person and sees the BS that they're trying to spread, or maybe even becoming aware of being made aware of what's happening. So I have to keep my composure. And usually when it's something like that, usually it's when I pull back and I do it almost in a surgical way, where I question people about their beliefs and about what they're saying, so that they can hear themselves. And
Wow.
sometimes within that interview, they come to a realization or a rationalization like, maybe, and then, but usually the more outraged and unhinged they become, it is because they realize that there is no validity in what they're doing. And they're doing it for either selfish or bigoted or for reasons that are not positive.
Hannah from Santa Rosa, California writes,
sometimes I do get mad. Sometimes I do. You have to like yell at people because it's the only time they hear. Sorry to interrupt Hannah's question. Go ahead, Hannah.
No, glad you did. Hannah from Santa Rosa, California. What are some books or people that inspired you while writing your book?
Well, I think you should right now. There's a great article. It's online in the New York Times, and it's called "Don Lemon Arranges His Books by Color" on my bookshelf. But it really is. It talks about what inspired my book and who my heroes were. So I would say to you, the book that really inspired me, if you really want to know, I'll give you one, and it's "The Fire Next Time" by James Baldwin. It is the richest, most thought-provoking book that I have ever read, and honest. And if you don't want to hear the truth, don't read that book.
Wow.
If you want to hear the truth and you want to awaken within yourself a sense of knowledge and a sense of pride, and even sometimes it'll anger you, I think that you should read that book. And it's James Baldwin.
James Baldwin. And the name of that one again, The Fire Next Time?
Fire Next Time.
Wow. I'm right. I'm going to take note of that.
Hold on. I'm going to grab my copy of it. Here it is.
Yeah, please. Thank you. We'll look at that beautiful building behind you.
Yeah.
I don't know any jokes. Sorry, people.
Wait. Wait, where's my book? I can't. Oh, here it is. I got it. I had to go into my bag. So I'm hoping I can get right here and not knock my computer out of the way. Okay, so this is one of my original copies, and you can see this is from like the 80s or 90s. And I thought this was my original, but my mom tells me there's like a beat up copy that's worse than this in her house. But look, and then I have the notes. It's like filled with like notes that I took and things. You see, like I wrote about, I underlined things and I starred them.
Cool, yes.
I even put questions, and this is from way back in the day that I did this. And that's my original copy of
Wow.
Fire Next Time by James Baldwin.
That is so fun.
Yeah.
Thanks
and look
for sharing
how small,
that.
I mean, it's a tiny book.
Yeah, I was going to say, it looks like an easy read.
Yeah, it's an easy read. You can read it within a day or a couple of days. I mean, The Fire Next Time is what, 141 pages. My book is like 200 pages. It's not that much longer. But it's fantastic.
Wow, I'm looking forward.
I would suggest you read that first. You can read that quickly and then read my book.
Okay. Lexa from Bristol, Connecticut writes, what was your favorite handoff moment with Chris?
I don't even remember it. Well, I do. I mean, I kind of remember it, but not. We have so many. There was one where I challenged him about something, and he realized that he was wrong, and he just stopped, and he went, "Oh, I really haven't had a chance. I haven't had a chance to think about that." And then there was one where I called him a Richard, if you know what I mean. And he said, I knew it was going to be trouble. It was like in the beginning of when we first started. And I said, come on, Chris, don't be a you know what. And he said, and that's when I knew I was in trouble.
A Richard.
Yeah. I said, come on, don't do that. Don't be a.
Yep.
And then he's like, okay, this is where this is going to go. And ever since then, it was kind of off the rails. But I think some of my favorites have been singing like Good Times, or singing All in the Family, like the theme songs to TV shows. I love that.
So cool. Carmen from New Orleans asks, do you believe that it's possible to end racism and erase its 400-year history in our lifetime?
I don't think it's possible to ever end racism. We haven't ended. I don't think it's possible to. There are always going to be people who are racist, but I think it's possible to address it in a productive way. And I do think it's possible to change minds. It's definitely possible to change laws, which will change people's behavior. Mm-hmm. So I think within our lifetime, we can change the laws, Voting Rights Act and that sort of thing, how people treat each other in the workplace and beyond. I think that we can change people's attitudes, but I do think that we can address it in a significant way, quite honestly, and I keep saying this, if we get to know each other, and we have to be each other's teachers. Yeah. And the best way to do that is to establish a loving relationship, friendship, or whatever it is, with someone who doesn't look like you. So yeah, I think we can address it. Can we get rid of the, dyed in the wool bigots? Maybe not, but we can hope that they can die out. Yeah. And we can force them out.
Chris from Newport Beach, California. How does it feel to be one of the only 2 national Black news anchors? What was the moment like when you realized this achievement?
One of the only 2? Who's the other one? Well, here's the thing. So we have a lot of national Black news anchors. There's only one in prime time, and that's me. And then there's one in early prime, who's Joy. Joy's on at 7 p.m. on MSNBC, who I love. And then prime time starts at 8, and it's me at 10. So I think I don't know who's calling me from North Carolina, but whatever. So I think that it feels a little, here's how it feels. I feel like a unicorn, but I also feel empowered. And I feel like that I must speak for the marginalized in the community. I must speak for people of color. I must speak for women, because women aren't often treated equally as well in the workplace and beyond. And I think that I have to speak for people who happen to be members of the LGBTQ community. But I also have to speak for people who are just right-thinking people who don't, whose points of view aren't necessarily heard all the time. And I don't mean right as in political right. I mean who want the right thing for the country, people who want us to continue to seek a more perfect union in this world, and the people who aren't thinking through a political lens. And so I speak for the people at home, and so I don't consider myself a political reporter when they're talking about politics and this means that, and this poll means this, and blah, 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 blah. I just speak from like, hey, look, I was having a beer yesterday with Danny, and Danny, this is what most people want to know. They're not living in your DC world. They just want to know how they can get along with their friends, what they can do to change this whole idea of whatever's going on in the country, and be able to pay their bills and take care of their family. And that's who I speak for.
Joel from Charlotte, North Carolina asks, what lessons can readers expect to learn throughout the book?
Lessons on being human. Now, here's the thing. What they'll also learn too is that this idea of racism is a complicated thing. And we often frame it in terms of racism. These are tough conversations to have. Well, I'm sitting here talking to you, Danny, and you can talk to me, and it's not uncomfortable, and it's not
at all.
But it's tough for some people. I get some people think it's tough, but once you start to talk about it, it's not so tough.
Yeah.
And we have to stop being so upset about or aggrieved about the possibility of someone thinking that we're bigoted or racist, or that we may be somehow offended, or we're worried about being called that. What's worse, the idea of the possible offense or the actual act itself? And so the actual act of racism is much more detrimental to society, and even you as a person who may be concerned that people are going to think you're racist or bigoted because you ask a question that you don't understand, or you may have some sort of blind spot. And that's what usually happens. Like, people get so offended. How dare you think that I'm racist? I would never be racist. How dare you think that? Oh my God. And they become so outraged that it becomes about them and them being aggrieved about the actual racism. And what is that? What is that? That's entitlement. That's privilege. And so stop saying I'm not racist, or I could never be. And say, well, maybe I do have some racial blind spots. And how can I be better? Maybe there are things that I need to think about. So that's where I stand with that.
Don, that is such a good point. That is such a good point, because that, if people can hear that, that disarms the whole problem of, we absolutely should feel free to go up to somebody and say, man, can I just ask you some questions? I totally want to learn. I totally want to see your perspective. And these are honest questions of mine.
What does this say right here? What I say to my friends about racism. So if you have a friend who you can talk to about racism, then that'll come from at the same place that it comes from with me and Chris. It comes from a place of understanding of, like, I have your back. You may say the wrong thing, but that's okay. We have a relationship and we're friends. And so it's okay. But as long as you don't become aggrieved and make it all about you, then you take it outside of the realm of where it should be taken, because that's not the point of it, whether proving that you're a racist or not. The whole point is to help us move beyond this.
Yes.
But sometimes in helping you get beyond it, it actually shows you that you are.
Yeah. And you didn't know. And so
you didn't know about it.
And I love this book. You brought so much clarity to me about really the essence of this book. And that is, it's almost like a safe friend to talk to have a conversation, to where maybe after this book, they can then go out and then start talking to people more.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Bobby from St. Louis, Missouri.
You need to help me sell this book, Danny. My gosh, look at you're having epiphanies left and right here.
Get the book. Well, I wish I could have had this in time for this interview, but there wasn't time to get it.
You'll have to let me know when you read it.
I would love to do that, and I'm definitely going to read it, because I think this is so important. I talked with. You said you were on The View earlier today.
I was on The View earlier today. Yeah.
Was Sunny Hostin there?
Yeah, Sunny was there. Sunny's a dear friend.
I talked to her months ago, and I'm telling you, it was one of the most powerful conversations I've ever had. And honestly, I feel those sort of feelings as I'm talking to you about, where I want to like ignore these questions and just you and me, man. We just talk about this book and about the issues at hand. I'm not going to do it, but I feel it's so
mad.
Yeah, it's so important what you've written, and I do hope so many people. And in fact, let me interrupt again and just say, you need to go get this book. It's at premiercollectibles.com/lemon. There's a certificate of authenticity in it. And what that means is that his signature is not a rolled stamp. His hand is cramping as we speak, as he signs these books. This is a special book. It's a, imagine if you could have James Baldwin's actual signature in the book you have, you can get Don Lemon's real signature. And for me, that's a collectible. And so I do hope you guys check it out. Let's keep asking questions. More are coming in too. So I know we'll never keep up with all of these, but Bobby from St. Louis, Missouri writes, if you could interview anyone alive or dead, who would you choose and why?
Well, obviously it would be James Baldwin. I know people always
Sure.
say Jesus, right? I would it would be weird. I would love to, everyone wants to interview the greats, and this is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. But what I would want to know is what happened to what happened to like the most racist of racists, like the head of the KKK when they died.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. And then once they got on the other side, they go, "Ooh, it's hot down here." And if they would have done anything differently, if they could go back and change it.
Wow.
Especially if you believe in heaven and hell, and you were on this earth, and you were, the grand wizard or grand dragon of the KKK, or if you were George Wallace, who changed at the end of his life, or someone who was like that.
Yeah.
What would your perspective be now? So that's what I would like to go back and do.
Wow.
Someone asked me a similar question, like, who would you have at a dinner party? What author?
Right.
Yeah, that's a bit of a different question, but yeah.
Sure. Tammy from Louisville, Kentucky. Are there any journalist, authors? I'm going to answer this for you, Don. Are there any journalists, authors, or writers that you admire? James Baldwin.
Me and me and Toni Morrison.
Okay.
Let's see. I loved Truman Capote. He was a bit of a mess, but I loved Truman Capote. Who else do I like? I like Beckett. I like Steinbeck. There are a lot to, now I like, obviously I love Isabel Wilkerson, who did Cast. So yeah, there are lots of great authors out there who I admire now, but I hate because I'm going to forget someone. But
yeah. All right. Wonder, Don, if you would entertain, we can't get through all of our fun questions, but would love to ask you some fast answer questions that are non-inflammatory in nature. Are you down? Lightning round. Are you ready?
Yeah.
What is your favorite breakfast food?
Bacon and eggs.
What is your favorite genre of music?
Ooh, classic rock and roll. Classic rock and roll together. I can't.
Yep.
I like classic rock and roll, and I like R&B. So
you had me at classic rock and roll. Who was your idol growing up?
My idol growing up was my dad and my mom.
What is your favorite international cuisine?
Like besides Chinese, so Thai food.
Okay. Do you have a favorite candy bar?
Snickers.
What is your favorite season?
Summer.
Favorite childhood memory?
Boating with my family.
Did you ever have an imaginary friend?
Yes. Skeeter and Squirto were my cousins and I, imaginary girlfriends growing up. And we would get dressed up on a date and ask them out. It was weird, but hey.
I love it. Do you have a favorite animal?
Dogs. They're right here somewhere.
Okay. What is your go-to workout?
Come here, boys. My go-to workout, running.
What do you never leave home without?
My cell phone.
Favorite superhero?
Superman.
Favorite time of day?
This is Boomer.
Oh, Boomer. What's up, bud?
Okay, come here, Barkley. Come here.
That's a doodle, some sort of doodle.
Yeah, and this is Gus. Come here, Gus. This is Gus. I
have to lean around my camera to see.
That's Gus.
Oh, hey, buddy.
And then this is Barkley. Uh-oh, I messed up my camera. Come here, Barks. Barks is heavy. Oh, that's Barkley.
Yay. Bunch of cuties.
Sorry about that. Go on.
No, I love it. Have you ever
home without my cell phone?
Okay. Have you ever ridden in a hot air balloon?
No.
What is your favorite board game?
Monopoly.
What are your favorite?
Life. I like Life better than Monopoly. Sorry.
What are your favorite pizza toppings?
Pepperoni and Italian sausage.
Do you have a favorite teacher, whether it be spiritual, political, any genre, past, present, dead, alive? Favorite teacher?
My first grade teacher was great, Mrs. Dansberg. And let's see. My favorite teacher spiritually would be T.D. Jakes.
Do you like movie popcorn?
Miss Abear, sorry, not Miss Dansberg. Miss Abear and T.D. Jakes, sorry.
Oh, yeah, good. Do you like movie popcorn with or without butter?
Oh, both, but with butter. As I got older, butter. Butter is good on, butter. I'm a cook. Butter makes everything great. Oh, and my favorite food, you asked me my favorite international cuisine, but my favorite thing to eat are crab legs.
Ooh, let's go.
All right.
Well, that's all the time we have to order.
That's it?
Yeah, that's it, man. To order Don's limited edition autograph book, go to premiercollectibles.com/lemon. And whether you are a collector or bibliophile, Premier Collectibles has the best-selling author-signed books that everyone wants, including this one. If you want to be a part of the live signing experience with more of your favorite authors, follow Premier Collectibles on Instagram or Facebook. Don, from all of your friends who have tuned in and from all of us at Premier Collectibles, this has been so meaningful to me personally, and I know to so many people watching. We love you and your puppies. Keep doing your thing, and thank you so much for being here.
Barkley, say bye to Danny. Thank you, and everybody. Thank you, guys. Make sure you buy it, because I really think this will help the country. It's all about unity and not division. This
Agree.
is the fire.
Love it, people. This is the fire. Take care, everybody.
You were